Welcome to another live Q&A with Holistic Home Journey. The way this works is every Wednesday, or actually anytime. I switched it to anytime. There's a pinned post inside of the community that you can drop your questions that you want me to answer live. And then on Thursdays, I go live and I answer them. So we're going to take questions that were submitted in advance in the group first, in the community. It's a off social media community. And then if anybody on TikTok or that's watching live on Zoom wants to chime in, you can absolutely do that. You can do that in the chat, or Nettie, you can always unmute and chat with us. So we have two questions that were specifically submitted for live Q&A, but there was a couple of other really good questions that were kind of on the main wall of the group. And so I want to talk about those things too. All right, so first question. Hold on. There it is. First question is from Peyton. And she says, how do I get my daughter, 5 years old, to stop ignoring me and do what I'm asking? I ask her 1,000 times to do something and she simply ignores me and doesn't do it until I've lost my mind and start raising my voice. It could be put her shoes away, pick up the toys, put her shoes on. She acts like she can't hear me until I'm yelling at her, and then she starts doing it. I never ignore her. I always help her or do something she's asked of me, so I don't know why she does it. So a lot of people find themselves sort of in that cycle, and oftentimes it's because that is the communication that has kind of been taught and been modeled, right? So you've sort of conditioned her unwillingly that you're not really serious until you start yelling. So the first thing you can do is don't yell. There's never going to come a point, I don't care if I've asked you 2,000 times, there's not going to come a point that I'm going to yell. And at 5 years old, you could have that conversation with her. You can say, hey, listen, I have noticed that's going on in our home, after dinner, I don't know, or after lunch one day, take her for ice cream or sit outside somewhere really like a calm space, a neutral space for both of you, and just say, hey, can I talk to you about something? I've noticed that it feels like when I'm speaking to you this way, you don't hear my words. You only hear my words when I'm screaming at you, and I don't want to scream at you anymore. That's not the kind of relationship that I want to have with you. You're 5 years old. You understand my words. How can I help you to hear me? And she might say something like, sometimes Zoe will tell me, well, if you say please. So, and then you have to like breathe for a second, because you're like, don't forget to tell me to say please, right? Like, but you have to calm and say, okay, I will try that, right? Because this is a relationship. This is a compromise. This is a connection. So then you might say to her, listen, what I will do instead of yelling is I will put my hand on your shoulder so that I make sure that you acknowledge me. If I put my hand on your shoulder, then that means like I need you to snap out of whatever you're doing and listen. And then what I would do is like I wouldn't ask 1,000 times anymore. I did a video recently, I think it's actually pinned, where you basically get like 4 chances in my house. So the first time I'm going to just tell you, hey, go get your shoes on. We're going to the store. I'm going to explain it to you. I'm going to tell you why, all the things. Second time I have to ask you, you're going to get a warning, hey, I need you to get your shoes on. If you don't get your shoes on, I'm going to have to pick out your shoes and put your shoes on your feet. And that would be kind of silly. You're 5 years old, right? Third time, I'm going to enforce the consequence. All right, let's go. Now I'm physically taking the iPad out of her hand or picking her up from where she is. Mom, don't pick me up. Okay, well then stand up and go put your shoes on. That's how I would handle it in my house. You want to take your shoes with you? You can give her some control. Hey, you want to take your shoes with you? Sure. But what you can't do is sit there and ignore me. I wouldn't do punishments that are like pushed off when we get home. You're not going to watch TV for the rest of the day, things like that. That's not going to be effective. You want to just assume that control in the moment. Give her some space, give her some control, give her a warning. We're going to leave in 5 minutes. Here's the 5-minute timer. Give her some responsibility, and then kind of like hold her to it. But the key there is going to be no matter what she does, do not reach that point of yelling. Even if that means that you need to like take a breath and move into the other room and then kind of like, I don't know, go message us in the community and be like, what should I do? don't yell at her, because she's waiting for that, she's expecting that, and we have to get your dynamic out of that habit. Okay, Brianna says, how do you start teaching about boundaries to younger children? My son is 13 months, has no concept of personal space. If I say mommy doesn't want to be climbed on right now and I set him on the floor, he screams and cries. So it's okay for him to scream and cry. It's okay for you to enforce your boundaries. I'm just thinking how to word this. Okay, so 13 months old, if you're trying to teach boundaries, boundaries should be like an ongoing conversation in your home. So, and I know it might seem silly, especially if they're nonverbal, but it's more like getting you in the habit. So if you say, no, I don't want to be climbed on right now, and you take him off, then you might say something like, I need you to respect mommy's boundaries, and you're going to take him off. You're going to do it respectfully. You're doing it, in a loving way. You're not throwing him off of you. You might even offer another way for him to interact with you. I don't want you on my body right now. You can sit here, and mommy's going to sit right next to you, and let's play with this toy. So you might offer an alternative, but I think the key there, 13 months old, they're not really speaking a ton. They're not probably understanding the boundary talk. You're going to start using it because you want to get in that habit, but you're really going to model to them. You're going to show them, no, I don't want this right now. And you're going to put them to the side. Maybe you're going to show them another way that they can interact with you. Now, the thing is that you have to if you're going to enforce boundaries for yourself, you have to make sure that the 13-month-old is allowed to have boundaries. So if you have a dog or an older sibling, or really, grandma who wants to give kisses even when the baby doesn't want kisses, if baby starts pushing you off, right? You need to respect that. Okay, you're allowed to have your boundaries. I'll be over here. And that is modeling the behavior that you want to see. So when somebody pushes off, when somebody says, no, I don't want you on me, including the 13-month-old, then we back off. So let me just see, we had some comments come in here, and then that's all of the previously submitted questions. So I can take some questions live, and then if nobody has questions live, I'm going to jump into the community and talk about some of the topics that we talked about this week, because we had a lot of really good things come up. The way it works in the community is like, basically something will happen, and you can go into the community and be like, hey, this just happened, like, how would you handle it? Or, hey, this is how I just handled this, like, what do you think? Did I overreact? Like, what is it? And we can all give feedback. So a lot of really good conversations come up because it's real life stuff. How do I get my 3-year-old to let me brush her hair? So the way that I do it is, you can give her a brush to let her try, here, you want to try with this brush on this side, and I'm going to try on this side. A lot of times, especially as their hair gets longer, the knots really make them not want to get their hair brushed. So you can get like the detangle spray, and then we kind of make it a game now. So even with my 5-year-old, if I'm like brushing through and she's like, oh no, I don't want to brush my hair right now, I'll be like, hold on, is that cotton candy in your hair? Zoe, how did cotton candy get in your hair? And then she'll be like, is there anything else in there? So then I'll be like brushing it, and then like the next knot, I'll be like, oh my gosh, you have ice cream in your hair? Who told you to put ice cream in your hair? Or like, we went to the state fair the other day, so I'll be like, you took the Ferris wheel home? I know you wanted to ride the Ferris wheel, but you can't just take it all home, and so it just takes the attention off of what's actually happening, which is the hair is being brushed and they're not liking it, because usually it hurts. And it's a time of the day where they're not like in control of their body, and it makes it like a fun thing. Hey, Jules, 13 months, they want your love. Hand the baby off to someone else. So yeah, at 13 months, they definitely do. They want to be on you. They want to cuddle you. But it is okay to need to set some boundaries. My youngest one, oh my God, she just wanted to be carried. It's so funny because now she's not affectionate, like, at all. Not even like, she doesn't even want to cuddle. She doesn't want you to even like sit near her. Like, there has to be like a space between you. But when she was teeny tiny, she always wanted to be like held in the sling. She wanted to be like strapped to you somehow. And I remember talking to my pediatrician, and I'm just like, I just need to put the baby down. Like, I don't know. I can't put the baby down. She won't let me. And probably by the time she was like 7, 8 months, like I'm telling the pediatrician, I'm like, I don't know, like my hip is all crooked. Like I need a little break. And she, she's the one who really started telling me too. She's like, it's okay if you have boundaries with the baby. It's okay if the baby needs to learn that there needs to be a separation sometimes, and you can do that by like just being there with them and just creating that separation. So like, hey, you can't be on me, but you could be like right here, and I'm going to sit next to you, and then slowly, and I think Mary says has a couple of videos on this, like slowly you can, I'm going to go step away for like 2 minutes, and then I'm going to come right back, and I'm going to step away for 5 minutes now, and I'm going to come right back, and you're sort of like training them. People don't get, you can't just do one thing and then tell your kids not to do it. Yeah, in my house, like any rules or so like when we were talking about the boundaries, right? Like anything that I would enforce for me or my husband, hold on, I gotta block somebody over here. If you come on my lives and you leave me inappropriate comments or disgusting comments, you're gonna get blocked immediately. I'm not here for that. So like talking about the boundaries, like I would not say I can enforce boundaries, but my child can't. My child can enforce boundaries. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna scroll through the community. If you guys have any questions that pop up in the meantime, you can drop it in the chat. Nettie is live in the Zoom. You get a Zoom link when you're part of the community, so she could actually just turn on her mic and ask me. But then if you have questions you can put it in the chat here, but I'm gonna scroll through the community and let's talk about a couple of the things that we talked about this week. So, hold on, wrong one. Oh, here. Hi, new to this app. This is from Shauna. New to this app and this entire method of parenting, but I'm just kind of struggling with phrases. I've been using with phrases I've been using for the past 4 years. I'm trying to switch from good girl, good boy to praising the actual behavior that makes them good. It's a tough one because it just rolls off the tongue. I'm finding it hard to stop saying you're okay after they like hurt themselves. I'll always ask, are you all right? Do you want a hug? Did you hurt yourself? And usually they're fine and they're ready to jump up and play, but I can't stop myself from saying you're okay. So this is something that we probably all go through because you have these things that are kind of like ingrained in you, right? Somebody would say it to you, or maybe you started parenting that way. Like I know I did. I started parenting in like more of the traditional way. And so you're used to saying like when the kid falls, you're used to being like, you're okay. Or, oh my God, we used to like, clap, or we used to be like, yay, and that's like all kind of invalidating. So it definitely takes an effort to kind of like stop. One thing that I would say is if you mess it up, right? So like if you, instead of saying, are you okay, say you're okay, just immediately correct, so if you just wind up saying like, oh, you're okay, and then you can say, oh, I'm sorry, are you okay? I don't know why I said you're okay. Are you okay? And you don't even have to backtrack. You can just correct, you're okay. Oh, are you okay? What are you feeling? I don't even like to say, did that hurt? Are you sad? I'll just say, like, what are you feeling? What do you need from me? But it's okay to quick correct like that. And then as far as like the good girl, good boy thing, I don't, I would just try to be more of like the observer. So I would try to, observe their behaviors, point out their behaviors. So you might say, and we just say it like as part of our day to day. And it's funny because some people will say, oh, I use this on my spouse. I have to treat my spouse like a 1-year-old or like a toddler, right? But no, you're not treating your spouse or your friend or whoever like a toddler. You're treating your toddler like a valuable relationship, right? And like you have a relationship with a full human. So that's pretty interesting to me because even if my husband were to do something, I would say to my husband, that was really thoughtful of you, right? Or that was so kind of you, or things that really helped me a lot. That was super helpful, right? So you can point out these traits. If I have a problem with something that my husband's doing, I'm not going to say, you're a bad husband. I'm going to say, hey, I didn't really like when you spoke to me that way. Or, hey, this was, this thing that you did put a lot of pressure on me, and that I was kind of like frustrated by that, or whatever. Right. So I wouldn't say to a husband or a friend, like, you're a good friend, you're a bad friend, like, you're whatever. I would say, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I've acknowledged on the good or the bad. And so with our kids, we have to do the same thing. So, hey, that was really helpful. Um, and try to think, like, what do you want your child to be affirming in their own brain? Because the things that you say to them, um, they're going to be affirming. And when you have to give a criticism, which I definitely agree that criticism should be given, when you have to give a criticism, hey, I think we need to work on listening. I think we need to work on respect. I think we need to work on, whatever it is. Uh, whatever, if you want to run some examples, I'm like blanking for examples today. But you could just like say, hey, we need to work on this. And another kind of like next step to that, and I know we're veering off a little bit, but when you have to tell your child, hey, you are not that was not great listening, when I told you not to do that, and then you did it anyway. That was pretty disrespectful, and it wasn't great listening. How can we solve this? And then after you kind of have that conversation, which these conversations aren't taking a half an hour, right? These conversations are like taking like under 30 seconds usually. Then you might say to them, or what I say to my daughter is, I love you just the same, even when you need to work on listening. I love you just the same, even when we get frustrated with each other. I love you just the same, and then whatever they are working on, because sometimes kids will internalize that. They will take it as, I'm bad, I'm less lovable. It's interesting because when I give my 5-year-old the freedom to be like, hey, like, what are some of your affirmations, right? One of her affirmations is, I am lovable. I never said that to her. But I think it's really interesting that like a 5-year-old, of all so I've taught her, like, you are strong, you are brave, you are kind, you are, all of these things. And she actually said, like, I am lovable. And I thought that was so funny. Like, kids really want to make sure that they are lovable. So whenever you have to do a criticism, always just make sure that there is that affection and bonding. I'm here to support you through learning this behavior. Is saying you are being rude okay to say? So I always just like to take it off of like the you, like, hey, that behavior is rude. Like, what is the thing that they can change, right? So if something that they're doing is rude, then what can they change? They can't change them. So I wouldn't say like, you are being rude, but I would say, when you speak over people, that is rude. Okay, we need to work on that because we don't want to be rude. When you cut in front of people when we're at the supermarket, that is rude. So what we're going to do is stay on our side of the aisle, and that's something that they can correct. Doing ASL for Be Right Back was a lifesaver for me. Oh, I'll have to learn that. Did that surprise you? Is a great thing to say. If the child falls, you can say that. You can ask questions. I like to just say, like, are you okay? And, how are you feeling? And what do you need from me? How can I help you? How do you enforce a rule to a 14-month-old? I tell him no and stop him from doing something. He screams. That's honestly all you can do. So 14 months old, Emma's almost 2. She's 21 months. I feel like I keep saying she's 18 months for some reason, but I've been saying that forever. Like, she's 21 months, you guys. She's gonna be 2 in January. And even with her, it's like, the key is, don't just say like, stop doing this and pull them away. Show them something that they can do, right? So when Emma starts touching my decorations that I have on my fireplace, I'm not going to say, no, you can't do that. I'm going to say, oh, those are decorations. Those stay here. Help me put it back. and you can play with these toys over here, and I'm going to redirect her. If she keeps coming back to my decorations to play with them, I'm going to say, no, you can play over here. Now, if when I redirect her over to her toys, she starts throwing a tantrum, that's fine. She's allowed to throw a tantrum. She can be pissed off. I get pissed off when people tell me I can't do things too. Emma likes to throw herself on the ground and hit things and whatever. And actually, like, we have a pillow that she could hit, so she'll go over and she'll be like, hit. I'm like, okay, whatever, and like, just don't give the tantrum any attention. Don't try to calm them down. Don't try to interfere. Don't try to make it better. They're allowed to have the tantrum as long as they're not crossing the boundary. Let them have the tantrum. Any advice on name calling, Tiffany? How old are the kids? What would you suggest for a child struggling with power imbalances? Can you just expand on that? Do you mean like power struggles with you? What's your favorite way to praise a 3-year-old? Always just acknowledging the behavior. That was so kind. That was so thoughtful. And pointing out specific behaviors, not to just say like, oh, you're so thoughtful, but to say like, that was really thoughtful when you got yourself a fruit snack and you also got one for your sister. 3 and 5. Any advice on sibling name calling ages 3 and 5? So the way that I would handle it is I would first, like, whatever they're calling each other, I would just say like, hey, what do you think that means? A lot of times they don't even know. It could be something that they're watching on TV. It could be something that they heard in school, whatever, and they're just sort of like imitating. So I usually always start with, well, what do you think that word means? And let them explain. And then after they say that, right, then you might say, okay, do you really think that about your brother? No. Okay. What do you think you could say to him instead of that name to get your point across? Do you need help communicating that with him? Right. And then give them words that they can use instead. And then if you need to set like a strong boundary, you might say something like, hey, we don't speak to each other like that in this house. You might have seen that. You might see your friends talk like that. You might see it on TV, but we don't speak to each other that way. I wouldn't jump right to that. I wouldn't just jump to like shutting it down, because I would try to see what they're trying to communicate. When they say that name, what do they think it means? What are they trying to communicate? And then give them the words instead. And then once you've done that and you've taught that to them, let them know, hey, listen, we don't communicate like that within this family. This is not how we treat each other. And then the consequence, if it was my child, would just be, listen, I noticed that you're picking these words up from, YouTube Kids. If you continue, or SpongeBob or whatever, if I continue to hear you guys saying this to each other, this is hurtful things, I'm going to have to put a limit on that. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this question was, what would you suggest for a child struggling with power imbalances? For example, my 9-year-old nephew is the oldest of his 3 siblings. He always needs to be in charge. Okay, so again, the way that we handle it, I can only tell you the way that we handle it. My 9-year-old nephew is oldest of the siblings. He always needs to be in charge. Okay. So 2 kind of things that I want to address here. If the 9-year-old is always feeling like he needs to be in charge, the 9-year-old might be always feeling like he needs to be in charge. I would revisit that as the grown-ups. Like, I would say, like, let's say all the kids are in the room together and they're all playing, like they're all in the living room, we're over here in the dining room, and all the kids are playing. If somebody gets hurt, do you go in and say, 9-year-old, why weren't you watching them? 9-year-old, why didn't you tell us that they were doing this? 9-year-old, why didn't you? Are they being held responsible? Is that 9-year-old being held responsible for these other kids that they feel like they need to be in charge? So I would first revisit that. And if that is the case, I would start to pull back some of that responsibility. When you walk into the room and something just happened, hey, what happened in here, and the 9-year-old immediately will probably start to get really defensive because they feel like they have the responsibility. And I would just affirm to them, hey, I'm responsible for these other kids. You're not responsible for them. I just want to know what happened. You're not going to get in trouble for somebody else's behavior. You're not responsible for their behavior. And so I would address that. And then if that's not the case, and you don't feel like that pressure is sort of being put on them, I would just make sure that they know and keep it affirming to them, hey, listen, I don't need you to be in control. I'm in control right now. I got it. I got the little kids. You are in charge of your body. And then when the 9-year-old starts to say things, so for instance, and all kids will do it, right? Like my 5-year-old will tell my 2-year-old what to do. And I will always say to my 5-year-old, unless she is in immediate danger getting hurt, who is in charge of her body? She is. Okay. So let her be. You are not in charge of her. You're not in charge of her body. You're not in charge of her mind. You're not in charge of what she is doing. If you can't interact with her and not try to control her, you're going to have to play separately, because she needs to learn how to be in control of her own body. My parents and brothers parent very different than us. We have a 4-year-old and an 8-month-old. Sorry, the comments get like so mixed up sometimes. This is why the community is so good, because you could just type like a full thought. You don't have to do it in like short little comments. Rachel, I can't find the rest of that comment. My parents and brothers parent different than us. We have a 4-year-old and 8-month-old. And this is and then I don't see the rest of the comments. Amy, you're welcome. Oh, there it is. I struggle with being around them. There it goes. Okay, my parents and brothers, we have a 4-year-old. Okay, so we can set boundaries with people who are spending time with our kids. And I want to find, I think a question might have came in the community, or maybe it was in my comments. I don't know. But somebody had asked me, like, would you correct the behavior? Oh, that's what it was. When I did the video on, like, instead of saying like you're good or you're bad, to sort of acknowledge the individual behavior, somebody said, what would you do if somebody said to your kid, like, oh, you're a good girl? Would you correct them? And honestly, I wouldn't. Everybody's going to interact differently with your kid. As long as it's not like abusive or toxic or harmful, I'm okay with my kids learning how to interact with different people with different personalities and different upbringings and different ways of interacting with her. So I wouldn't. So if your parents, the kids' uncles, whoever it is, parents differently than you, you can sort of gauge what that looks like. Is their difference in parenting harmful? Are they shaming your child? Are they hitting your child? Are they putting your child in timeout? Are they, commenting on your child's appearance or the size of their body and things like that, toxic things? If those things are happening, then I would definitely step in and I would say to them, hey, listen, I need to set a boundary here. I can't have you acting like this, talking like this, whatever it is. And if they continue, then you need to cut back on the time spent with them. But if it's just small things that you can let go and sort of teach your child and say, sometimes people do that differently. We don't do that in our home, but sometimes people do things differently. Then I think it is a good learning experience for them. Suggestions on when you tell your child over and over not to do something, what is the consequence? An almost 4-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. So those ages, I mean, they're going to test you. They're going to test you. The 4-year-old, depending on kind of what you're doing, and overall parenting, might be start getting out of that phase. But like almost 2 years old, they're going to keep testing. For the almost 2-year-old, I would just redirect. For both of them, actually, just don't We have to get out of the habit of saying no and instead teach them what they can do. Kids don't know, like even the simplest of things, they just don't know. Like they don't know that you're not supposed to climb the Christmas tree. They don't know that you're not supposed to play in the dog's water bowl. They don't know that, like, all these times you're not supposed to sit on the Roomba, right? So if you just keep saying no, 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 they're still curious about it. They still don't understand, like, why can't I do it? What's wrong with that, right? So instead, we might say, oh, we don't play in the dog's water bowl. This is for the puppy. If you want to play in water, this is what you can do. Give them a bowl with water. Oh no, we don't take down mommy's decorations. If you want to play with toys, here's the toys that you can play with. If you want to interact with my decorations, the way you do that is you take a step back and you say, wow, that's beautiful. And then you move on. And so you have to teach them what to do and redirect them, instead of just like saying no and then finding a consequence. If you want to give a specific example, we can dive into that. What about with a 5-year-old who says he's going to do what he wants? So I would actually say you can do what you want. That is your body. That is your mind. But when you're doing what you want, you can't cross boundaries. You can't cross my boundaries. So if you are doing what you want, and then I have a boundary that you can't climb on my body, well, that's not part of what you can do, because that would be crossing my boundary. Or, if you are doing what you want, but you run out of our backyard and into the neighbor's yard, well, then there's going to be a consequence. Now I can't trust you in the backyard. And so now you can't go outside by yourself. And so, and I would just see if you can give that child some control. Hey, these are the things that you have control of. These are the things that I have to set a boundary with. And that way the child will start to know, like, if mom can give me freedom, she's going to give me freedom. And so I don't have to fight for it so much. Nettie, wanting to grab a hold of dog food at 7 months old. So you might actually let them feed the dog. So maybe it's going to be the 7 months old job, right? You're going to show them how to interact with that dog bowl. You're going to give them the little scooper and let them scoop it into the dog's bowl. You might put a bowl out of Cheerios near the dog's bowl and say, these are yours. And now he can grab in and grab those Cheerios. It's going to have that same kind of texture as the dog food. It's still grabbing from a bowl. You're kind of meeting that need, but you're going to show, okay, these are yours and these are the puppies. When Zoe was young, she loved the freaking dog bowls. And so we would even put her dinner, don't judge me, we would put her dinner in a bowl on the floor, and she would literally eat like a dog, on the floor. But because she wanted to eat out of the dog bowl. So you know what? Here's your experience. Here's how you could eat out of the dog bowl. What are appropriate consequences if they just won't listen? So I know you're not going to like my answer, but a consequence simply because the child won't listen to you is only for your ego's sake. And I say this in a loving way, and because I just don't want to sugarcoat it for you. But if you are just punishing them because they didn't listen, then that's not really a lesson for them. That's just your ego and yourself saying, my kids are going to listen to me, or, and that's it. The appropriate consequence when they don't listen should be the natural consequence that happens from that action. So if you want to run some examples, but if you say, we talked about running around the house the other day, right? Okay, child's running around the house. Child's not listening when you say don't run around the house. Well, stop saying don't run around the house and just expecting your child to want to listen to you. Instead, say, hey, we don't run around the house because there's not enough space here, and I'm afraid that you or somebody else is going to get hurt. If you want to run, you can go outside. Oh, we don't have outside. If you want to run, how about you try jogging in place? How about I put on a YouTube workout video for you and you can do a dance party? We can do this to burn the energy. So you're explaining to them why they can't do the thing. You are giving them some alternatives. And then if they keep on running, then the consequence is, the consequence is they fall and they bump into somebody, or the consequence is we have to sit down and do quiet time, right? Maybe that's the consequence of if you keep running around, I'm giving you, you know, I'm telling you we can't run around in my house. I'm allowed to have rules in the house. I'm giving you alternatives, right? So I'm telling you, you can go run outside, you can jog in place, you can jump on the little trampoline, you can do a workout video. If you don't want any of that, then it's going to have to be quiet time. And we'll sit and we'll do quiet time. And if your kids are still fighting you at that point, there's a deeper issue. There is a deeper issue in your connection, because when you are respectful to your kids, when you tell them why they need to do things, when you tell them alternatives so that they can meet their needs, they won't fight you as much. And I know it feels counterintuitive, and I know it feels like, no, if I let up control, then they're going to fight me more. They won't fight you more. And there's so many mamas in the community that will tell you that once you kind of get over that first hump of being like, okay, we're changing things up, they want to respect you. All right, I'm gonna do like 2 more questions, and then I'm gonna go have some lunch while Emma's still sleeping. Yesterday was a really hard day as a mom. 7-year-old told me I was a bad mom because I had him sit down after he almost ran his brother over with a dirt bike. I took the bike away, but boy, that was a fight. Okay, my 7-year-old told me I was a bad mom because I made him sit down after he almost ran his brother over with the dirt bike. Okay, so hold on one second. If you're on here to just hate on me, it's not the place. Just go to somebody else's live. Okay. The way I would have handled that, 7-year-old is zipping around the cul-de-sac, the street, whatever, right? There's other little kids around, and he zips right past the little kid. You know, I'm probably not going to take the bike away. What I am going to do is teach them how to be safe on the bike. It's going to be a stop. Whoa, stop. There are children playing right here. You cannot ride the bike in this area. If you're going to ride the bike, it needs to be over here. If you come to this area again where the kids are playing, I'm going to have to put the bike away because I need to keep these kids safe. And then give them the option, you know, give them the opportunity to go ahead and follow that direction, right? Follow that boundary. They know what the consequence is, let them follow that boundary. And when they break that boundary, if they break that boundary, so now they zip past and they almost hit the kids because they've broken the boundary. Now I take the bike and you can kick, scream, tell me I'm a bad mom. You can do all the things, but that's fine. And I would just let them get it out. Okay, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I have to keep these kids safe, and so the bike is going away. Next time, if you can keep the bike over here, I don't have a problem with you riding the bike, but for today, we're taking the break with it. And then when things are calm, you might approach him and say, you know, some of the things you said when you were really angry were very hurtful. And I don't know if you meant to be hurtful. I want you to know that when we are in an argument, mommy still loves you. And I don't think that you're a bad kid. And sometimes we're going to be in arguments. And I hope that you still love me too, because we have to get through these things together. We need to learn together. I'm just going to block this person. Like, why even waste the time to come into my live feed if you're just gonna be nasty? I feel like you're so knowledgeable. Where did you learn? Thank you so much for saying that. Believe it or not, I haven't read any parenting books. Most of what I talk about is because I am on a crazy personal growth journey, have been since 2018. And as I learn things for myself at 32 years old, I want to see how I can teach those lessons to my kids now. How do you teach them to express their emotions? How do you teach them that they're allowed to have emotions? How do you teach them that they're allowed to take up space in this world, that they're allowed to have wants and desires outside of what their parents want from them or other people want from them? Like all of these skills that I'm learning as a 32-year-old, like, you know, broken person. How do I teach my children now so that they don't have to learn these things later? being looked at for as a pushover. I'm trying to see what we were talking about. I'm sorry. People sometimes look at me and think I'm a pushover. I'm probably one of like the strictest parents, but like my kids have very high expectations. I am kind to them, respectful to them. I explain things to them. They are very knowledgeable, but I hold them to a high standard. I won't tolerate a lot of the behaviors that parents that have harsher punishments will often tolerate because just came to my head. Sometimes what I think is when you hit your kid and you scream at them and you punish them, right? What happens when that kid acts out in the supermarket? Do you hit your kid in the middle of the supermarket and scream at them and tell them they're bad and isolate them? No, you won't do that in public, right? So they can get away with things when they're out in public. But when your kid does something wrong and you respectfully and firmly set a boundary and enforce a natural consequence that happens in the moment, you can do that anywhere. So your kids are not going to feel like, oh, good, we're outside the home. Mom's not going to freaking beat me and scream at me and send me to my room out here. I'm going to act however the heck I want. Might look softer to people, but people could think all they want. My responsibility is to my children. So if you enforce a boundary, and so I have a pinned video that tells you the 4 steps for my house. So let's say like you teach them the lesson, you give them like a warning and a consequence, you enforce the consequence, right? So I'm thinking that comment might have been from when we were talking about the kid on the bike, right? If he's zooming past, you give him the consequence, you say, hey, listen, if you do that again, I'm going to take the bike. He does it again. He zooms past the little kids. You say, okay, well, now I have to enforce the consequence. I have to take the bike. And he's like, I'm going to listen now. I'm not going to do it. I would give the one last chance. I would, because a lot of times, even the younger kids, and especially if you're new to this parenting style, they don't know if you're going to actually enforce the consequence. So they don't actually like get it until you start to enforce the consequence. Give them one last shot. Listen, this is going to be the last time. It happens again. You can kick, cry, scream, whatever you want to do. I'm taking it away. And that's it. But I always give that, I call it redemption. I always give that redemption. In the bike example, you say to the kid that was upset, I'm sorry you feel that way. I love your page. I'm so thankful for all the tips. It helps my parenting journey. Oh, you're welcome, Mackenzie. I'm happy that you're here. Make sure you join the community. I've been told you can't apologize for someone's feelings. I've been told you can't apologize for someone's feelings. I'm trying to think of what that means. Like, I'm sorry you're sad, or I'm sorry you're feeling that way, like that kind of thing. I guess that makes sense if I think about it, but I definitely, I would have to think on that, because I definitely do that. I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. Maybe the better thing to say is like, okay, like, it's okay if you're feeling that way, or everybody feels that way sometimes. I'm here if you need me. That's a good thing to think about. This is why I love the community. We're always growing. I'm always growing. I don't know everything. I like that. You can't apologize for someone's feelings. Thank you for the statement about saying hurtful things. Joint custody has been so tough. I can't even imagine that. That has to be very tough, because you have to release control before you're even ready to release control. That has to be very tough. I need a list of boundaries that are rightful to set. Okay, so I'm so sorry. I'm going to answer this. I'm going to talk about this one last thing where it says I need a list of boundaries that are rightful to set. And then I have to hop off. I have to go like eat something. I love chatting with you guys. But make sure you join the community. It's linked in my bio. You can put all of your questions there anytime, and I usually answer them within 24 hours. And you have more than 140 characters. You can join the free one, or if you do the paid one, it's $5.99 a month, and we do like book club. I have expert interviews and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk about this one last thing, and I'm really going to go, because I keep saying I'm going to go and I'm not. Okay. Wait, where's the question? Okay, I need a list of boundaries that are rightful to set. So I one time had a coaching client who said to me, Crystal, I wish, like, can you just make me a list of like, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, do this. These are the correct boundaries. These are the correct consequences. And I said, let me tell you something. If any parenting expert or coach or anybody ever says, yes, I will make you a set list of what to do in every single situation, I said, you got to run away because that is not holistic parenting. Now we're going back to traditional parenting. We're saying this is the course of action. This is the course that my kids can take. This is the appropriate path. And I am going to do anything that it takes to keep my kid on that path. And that is not holistic parenting. Holistic parenting is taking each moment as it is and thinking about the child as a whole, their emotional, physical, mental, emotional state, right? You're thinking about the environment as a whole. Where are we? Did they not take a nap? Have they eaten? Is it a stressful, crowded day, right? Environment as a whole, the other people around them, right? So who are they interacting with? What are the personalities of those people? Is it a holiday? Like, well, you are literally taking everything into account, okay? And then you're making a decision in that moment based on the best interest of the child and teaching them in that moment for what is relevant in that moment. So if we were to say, I need to know acceptable boundaries, it depends. 9 times out of 10, if we're riding bikes in my cul-de-sac, my daughter's allowed to go one driveway up and turn around. If it's a Tuesday afternoon, it's slow, I know people aren't really coming home from work, I might say, you know what, the boundary today is you could go 3 driveways up, right? So the boundary is like what makes sense in that moment, at that moment of time. And it's okay if boundaries change. It's okay if today I'm comfortable with this and tomorrow I'm comfortable with that. We don't have to stay in holistic parenting. We don't have to stay on this rigid path. We can be in the moment. And that's why we can have such connection with our children, because we can be in the moment. Who are they in the moment? Who are you in the moment? Where are you? What's happening in the moment, right? So, all right, on that note, Nettie, thank you for being here. I'm going to end the live here. I really appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.